I'm Cindy, and welcome to Pearls of Liberty for this Sunday, March 27th, 2011. We are privileged today to have some information from our friend and Dr. Noah, that he shared with us and will be sharing with you. And this morning we also want to talk just a little bit about Libya. Unfortunately, that situation is ongoing and has escalated this week, as you probably know. And Don has some opinions about that. So,
okay, we mentioned last week how outrageous it is that we were committing our forces. That when I say we, I mean the United States, even though it's really not our government anymore. It's acting on its own, especially clear in this case, without even congressional budget approval to do a military operation in Libya. And that's being passed off as a peacekeeping mission. And this is what we always notice when Republican and Democratic run administrations trade hands. It's just a different way of selling whatever war that they're going into. In this case, they're selling it as a humanitarian action, and one of the most outrageous statements was from Hillary Clinton, where she said, Libya will accept a peacekeeping operation or else. Basically, a threat that they will receive a peacekeeping force. Sounds like a very thinly veiled cover for ground operations beginning soon. And of course you do have the commander-in-chief doing a bombing operation under the guise of this no-fly zone. Again, no congressional approval whatsoever. And one of the interesting things that came out this week was that an interview surfaced on the internet of Joe Biden as candidate, even before he was vice presidential nominee, in which he was dealing with what he didn't like about the Bush administration. And in that clip that became widely circulated on the internet, he says that any president, that he was a constitutional scholar and a constitutional lawyer, and he would begin to do impeachment proceedings on any declaration, on any military operation that did not have a declaration of war. So of course he's changed his tune now, and again what's really happening is that this whole thing is globalist run. What's happening in the Middle East and North Africa, and it's looking like it may be more centered on the North Africa and that area of the world than as much in the Middle East now. What's happening is they're trading in their old dictators for new ones. They want dictators that will be even more responsive to the plans of the New World Order to merge nations and lose global sovereignty. And some of these Tin Man dictators that we've had in the past that are the kind of the one-man show, that's the old game. They want guys that'll play ball with the others, that'll play ball with the globalist plans, that'll do things like introduce programs that are run by the United Nations in order to run eugenics operations against their own people, etc. So we're not a fan of Muammar Gaddafi. We're not a fan of Mubarak or any of these guys, but that's what's happening. They're getting rid of the old guard dictators and attempting to put in their new ones. And when you have a relatively militarily smart guy like Gaddafi, then he is going to do his best not to get kicked out and not to have a stroke like Mubarak did. He's going to be, he's a fighting man, he's a military guy, and he is going to fight this war. So that means that a peacekeeping force is required. So welcome to the brave new world where war is peace and peace is war.
And so meet the old boss, the same as the new boss, more or less, with these people who are being replaced by the New World Order. Don, I think you also wanted to discuss the difference between neocons and constitutional conservatives in this context.
Right. That's very important and is easily recognizable in this context. And I'm talking about the context of foreign wars without any approval by Congress, without any declaration of war. This is something that that neocons love. We're talking about what the Republican Party has become. At the grassroots level, there's a lot of people that love liberty and constitutional values, but at the top, they are really oriented by what's called a neoconservative paradigm. And believe it or not, if you research on the internet, you'll find that the roots of neoconservatism are Leon Trotsky, who came out of Russia, the Soviet Union, and his whole thing was he felt that Stalin betrayed the revolution and that they were going to do it right. Well, they are oriented around building an empire, a globalist empire, and doing a strong-arm approach to foreign policy. It really isn't about principles of liberty. It's about principles of conquest and the doctrines that come from Trotsky and communism. So that is where neoconservative, that philosophy comes from, and that's what is happening when we're involved in these foreign wars, whether they're led by Democrats with more of a thinly veiled way of, it's a humanitarian type of an operation, but so they put on a disguise in that form. It's more raw when you get the Republican leadership directly in charge, but neoconservatism is about foreign conquest. So that's what I wanted to point out there, and that.
Well, that's helpful. I know that's not something that I'm not as much of a student of history as Don is, and he definitely is aware of a lot of the schemes that have been perpetrated in the past and is able to recognize what's happening today based on that. So I feel very fortunate to have him available to help me understand these things, and I'm glad that you get the opportunity as well.
Now I think what we want to do is to introduce our friend Dr. Noah, and one of the things I'd like to mention in the context that he's going to be talking about radiation, Japan, the Fukushima, and how to protect your health in a broader context with some very interesting scientific results that came out of Hiroshima, Nagasaki, World War II, and protection of radiation there. But I'd also like to point out a news story that I saw this week just recently about some negative things that we're seeing on the Oregon coast that are, as you know, animals are some of the indicators that in radiation damaged areas can often show the signs before humans are aware, and we are seeing some strange behavior of animals on the Oregon coast, things that would cause us to sit up and take notice and say, we may have a problem here. In reviewing Joel Skousen's World's Affair Brief for this week, I noticed that he was strongly stating that our biggest danger from the Fukushima nuclear incident is likely to come by water, because that's where the most contamination is. It's not up into the upper atmosphere with a blast that carried particles very high skyward. So we want to be careful about the seafood that comes from the Pacific Ocean, and there are things that you can do to prepare, as Dr. Noah will explain.
Welcome to our health portion of Pearls of Liberty, and we have our good friend Dr. Noah with us today, and he's going to give you some recommendations for streamlining the supplements that you take. If you're like most truthers, you probably are a little into natural health, and you probably take handfuls of vitamins like we do.
Sometimes bagful. I have people come in bagful.
But you don't need to do that anymore. So can you...
Well, thanks for bringing me on. I appreciate what you and Don do out there in terms of the internet, bringing out important information, because health goes beyond just your own body, as the people around you. So that implies, political, social, environmental. So those are all big factors. So I'm very impressed that you allowed me to come on like that. But yes, one of the basic type of specialties I do in functional medicine is people come in with their nutrients because people can get overwhelmed because on the internet and on TV, vitamin E does this, vitamin C does that, and so people start buying all these things, and there's issues, and we can talk about later about how much you need to take and different types of scenarios. So you want to just go over the kind of the basic 5. So everybody needs to do that. First one is a good multiple vitamin, multiple mineral. And that just kind of covers all your bases. That has all your different types of minerals and your A's through C's, and it has some antioxidants, which we'll talk about a little bit. The external or exogenous antioxidants. So those are kind of good to have. You want to, and we'll talk a little later on about quality becomes a big factor. So where you buy it, just like with when you buy clothes or a car or food, there's different quality. There's stuff that's junk and there's stuff that's really good. The next one is really important, we talked a little bit before, is essential fatty acids. Those are the good kind of fats. There's bad fats, like the fats that you go to through fast food stores, trans fatty acids. These are actually destroy our body. You want the good kind of fats, and most people have heard about the fish oils. Those are good essential fatty acids. For vegetarians, there's flaxseed oil and hemp oil, which have a good quality of those type of things. Those are necessary for our general health and well-being. Next one, which is a really hot one right now, is vitamin D. Boy, vitamin D goes beyond just a vitamin. It's actually considered an internal steroid. It has a kind of a hormonal type of effect and has wonderful things from depression, cancer, immune function. Boy, if one thing's happened. Plus, we've got more concerned about the, putting things on our skin so we don't make as much in the environment. And so they just came out with a new standard that people should be taking 4,000 to 8,000 international units. The 400 to 1,000 is outdated, so that's an important factor. The other one is that your probiotics, the good bacteria, and your gut is like your lawn. If you don't do anything, what happens? The weeds kind of come in. It's just one of those unfortunate things. I mean, wish we could switch things around and we really enjoy weeds, but they're not good. Same as with our digestive tract. You have good bugs and bad bugs. And unfortunately, the bad bugs come in and cause all kinds of problems. 70% of your immune system is in your gut.
Wow.
70% of your neurotransmitters are in your gut. So your gut's a real big thing.
Wow.
Actually, there's more bacterial numbers per cells than all the cells of your body. So there's actually more numbers of these foreign substances in your body than the whole 30 to 60 trillion cells that you have here. So you want friendly type of numbers. When you have that kind of numbers, where you have trillions and trillions of going. In fact, one of the probiotics I'm using now from Australia is, instead of being in billions, it's actually in trillions. And so when you consume this, you're actually giving trillion of these good bacteria. So that's an important factor. And the last one is a kind of a new one, just came out in the last couple of years, is a real breakthrough in terms of antioxidant, free radical. These are the foundations of all diseases and the aging process. As our body, just like a car, has combustion, there's byproducts that come out of that, and that's just the natural, that just happens like that. As we get older, just like with an old car, the stuff that's coming out the tailpipe increases, and that's why we do tune-ups, and then we have smog checks to be able to protect that. Same as with our body. After about age 20, the free radicals inside the cell are balanced, and then they start breaking down. So this new type of compound called Protandim, which is a NRF2, we won't go too much into it, is a way to communicate to the body's own internal type of antioxidants and produce it. And as we talked a little bit before, yes. So it's still great to have, acai berries and blueberries and eat your broccoli and carrots. Those are external antioxidants, and they're real good. But they also basically, have limited one acai berry or antioxidants to one free radical. Whereas if you stimulate the internal ones, SOD, catalase, and glutathione, one SOD is able to neutralize 1 million free radicals versus just one. And plus it's able to reduce like that.
So that sounds really exciting.
It is exciting. It's a real kind of a breakthrough. That's just some technology and understanding in the last 5 years that taking antioxidants have health benefits, but what the scientists haven't been able to find out, it doesn't get to the core of the problem. It's called oxidative stress. When you take blueberries and broccoli like that, the oxidative stress levels stay the same, so it's been very frustrating. We're kind of, once again, working at the other end. So just like with that car, we were talking about you're a nice example there. You can try to slow down a car by, having, me,
Stop!
Don. Yeah, stop. So you try. That helps a little bit. Don comes in, tries, and I come in, but that's not as effective if you're in the car and put your foot on the brake. See how easy it is? One
Right.
person with one foot can stop the
Sure.
car, or stop the oxidative stress, or stop the aging process, or stop the disease process. And so now we have that using this particular type of compound called protandem. And so a little example is, so up to about age 20, the free radicals are produced inside the cell, that's inside the cell, and everything's all happy. After about age 20, it's like a car, when you start putting some miles on it, is that the free radicals start to increase quite a bit. And so you can use broccoli, and if you put cauliflower on here, it dampens it a little bit, but now we're able to actually turn off the actual process. Yeah, it goes down like that.
Excellent. It goes off.
It goes off, exactly.
It stops.
It stops, just like what you were saying. The person in the car puts the foot on the brake and able to stop the oxidative stress from occurring. So very exciting.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. And Dr. Noah has been very helpful in placing some videos on YouTube that discuss the effects of radioactivity on the body and how those can be prevented. And because some of the radioactivity is actually reaching our nation at this point, we'd like to ask him to talk just a little bit about, he has some suggestions and some natural compounds.
Well, radioactivity is obviously a very dangerous type of thing, and the safest level is 0. So there are standards, and that's just how things are. Some people think that allows certain businesses to exist, so they're able to go up to a certain level, and anything above that's really bad. But once again, 0 is the best thing like that. So now with what's happening in Japan, and as of this morning, is that things are getting worse, not better. Those particular types of compounds go into the air and into the water, and our world is once again all interconnected. And that becomes a problem. So people, have heard about potassium iodine, and that has a place. That's more used if you're really in close proximity. Potassium iodide is almost like a drug, so you want to be kind of careful about it. The 130 milligrams that they recommend is very, very high, very toxic. You don't want to go that way. I take a different approach. I've done some research, and we looked at 2 hospitals in Nagasaki, Japan. So it's kind of ironic there that in 1945 we dropped an atomic bomb like that, and there was 2 hospitals there. One of the Japanese hospitals had the typical kind of a medical model. They gave them crappy food, gave them crappy drugs, and they all died.
Yikes.
Yeah. The other,
sounds familiar.
Yeah, and that actually was a mile further than this next hospital, where the doctor there fed his patients brown rice, a certain type of pumpkin, miso soup, and seaweed, and they all lived.
Remarkable.
And that's where I think you really have to start thinking broader. Potassium iodide is great for the thyroid, and thyroid cancer is no fun, but here's something that works on all, the thyroid and all the rest of the body. Because you can protect your thyroid and still die of bone cancer, liver cancer, and other kind of cancers. With these particular natural products, you're able to reduce the risk like that, and there's been studies showing like that. So I advocate using seaweeds, which has been used for thousands of years. Lots of nutrients. Seaweed is sea vegetables, so there's no contraindication in terms of anything like that. And miso is fermented type of soybeans, which is the best time. So making a little miso soup or like that, inexpensive, a lot more practical. And so to me, that's a broader type of thing, not only to help with your thyroid condition, but also with the rest of the cancer. And it's readily available. Unfortunately, because of the hysteria, I've been reading reports that people on eBay are selling these potassium iodine, which usually went for $80, $120 for $500-600. I mean, people are just like monsters, just really taking advantage of it. Well, screw those people. Go to your Asian store, go to your health food store. I mean, I know like Whole Foods and health food stores and stuff. Just go to and get seaweed and just eat it itself. Right. Or in my practice, if you don't want that, they come in little capsules and you just take them. So either way, they want like that. But that's it. And then you go to the store and you get miso.
At what point do we need to be careful about where we get the seaweed? The Pacific Ocean is going to have some problems down the road, right?
That's right. That's right. So right now, fortunately, we've got the stock that that before this happened here. So that will be a factor like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
And that is always the constant issue, because there's still radioactivity from from World War II. You know,
Chernobyl.
Cindy and Don are a lot younger than I am, but when I was growing up in the 50s, they were doing atomic testing above ground, so all that was basically going around. So I've been exposed to like that. So it's constantly being exposed to that thing. And that's why taking these seaweeds, even though they're somewhat toxic, they still have these chelating compounds that have some benefit for you. So that's what's kind of great about that.
We are also wondering about just the very basic supplements to take. Most of your patients eat a lot of raw foods.
No, they don't actually.
Well,
That's
you
encourage
them to eat a lot of raw foods.
So after about age 25 to 30, then enzymes start becoming a factor like that. So once again, you can start, it's like, you know, peeling an onion. I mean, once again, we talked about the basics, and then the next level would be going into like enzymes and stuff, and then hydrochloric acid stimulators and things. Unlike what you hear on the news, most indigestion heartburn is usually due to a lack of hydrochloric acid, not too much of it.
That's remarkable.
And I know, but that's because they create these drugs that do just exactly like that, reduce it. Then you become dependent on it, develop osteoporosis and cancer and things like that from all these, you know, all these type of, you know, blockers that they have like that.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, this has been fun.
Don and I both feel very privileged
I'm honored
to know
for the good work that you're doing
Noah.
out there
It's
too.
One of the great things that's come into our lives in the last couple of years.
Well, thank you, and I hope I can do this again for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, great.
We definitely feel fortunate that we have these resources, and we very much are willing, and not only are willing, but want to share them, and hope that you'll take advantage of some of this information that we pass along. We will be moving into our Pearl Culture segment at this point, because there's a movie that we would like to discuss in a little greater detail that has a lot to do with something that we haven't. We discussed media to some extent during the week of the Academy Awards, but we more or less only discussed film. And one of the most important aspects of media is news reporting. And we saw an excellent film last night that kind of shows, if you watch it carefully and consider what the message is, it will help you understand where the media is and why. So Don, would you introduce that film?
The film is called Only the Truth, and some of the stars' names that are highlighted in it, Cindy knows better than me, but the one that was immediately recognizable to me is Alan Alda. He plays the part, and you may remember him from MASH and from some of the older films. He's gray-haired now, but still has his familiar quick wit, etc. The premise of the film is a reporter who will not reveal her source. And the story in which the reporter is using the information exposes the current administration in the White House, and in of course a very negative light. And it takes place in contemporary times, and what you see in the film is that immediately there's a groundswell of support for her, but that fades away as she stays in prison longer and longer and longer, and the system is utilized to sidetrack the people and to control the news cycle so that she's out of sight, out of mind, and the administration really is in control of the press and in control of the legal system, etc. So that, unfortunately, is what we see a lot of today. And it, of course, always helps to see these things, even if it's fictional, in a personalized format, because you see sometimes the kinds of things that we can't see because we're too close to them. It helps you to have a different perspective on some of these dynamics that are happening. It's a very good film. It did not get into the theaters because it missed its advertising cycle, etc. A few things went on. Makes me kind of wonder, well, was the film itself a victim of some of the things that it talks about? Very possible. Got a very good review from Gene Siskel, who said this is well beyond the level of DVD-only films. It's a very high-quality film and a very good ending, and I won't give it away. We enjoyed it very much.
Well, thank you for not giving away the ending. We did enjoy the film, and I'm not sure if you mentioned it's loosely based, or not, maybe not even loosely based, right, on. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Right. It is kind of centered around the Valerie Plame incident, in which the CIA agent's cover was outed and who did the outing and on all that thing. So the news reporter that was writing this story in this fictional scenario differs a little bit from the Valerie Plame incident, was the one who was doing the exposing, but who was the person that revealed the source. That is, of course, different from what happened in real life. But one of the things that, if you come from the conservative side, as we do, we tended to think that that incident was relatively minor, and in the grand scheme of things, maybe it was, but it was one of the key ingredients that was used to justify the Iraq War and weapons of mass destruction that had to do with this proof that there was Saddam Hussein using yellow cake uranium from Nigeria, etc. So that's all background for the film.
And a lot of the message here, it has to do with essentially the government can threaten the press in ways in which the press will be afraid to print things, or for video media, to say things that for which there might be consequences later, and it's another very thinly veiled threat.
Yes, even the newspaper was threatened with huge legal actions that would consume their time and money, and what you see is a contest between the love for the truth and the let's just defend ourselves, or let's just take the easy way out, or let's just get this over with, don't make waves, and is this battle really worth fighting? And you'll see those ideals play out in this story.
And I think sometimes we tend to believe, I tend to just assume that media is corrupted because the owners of the media are directing it in certain ways, and in many cases that is the truth. However, there are evidently still some pockets of independent news, and when they can be manipulated through threats in this way, even those people who are well-intentioned can be stifled, and that's another means of control.
Right, as long as you have reporters that are true reporters willing to dig and to put their career and integrity on the line for a story, then I think you'll have successful journalism. But that has become more and more rare, as you'll see in the story. And I did want to point out what Cindy had just said about media ownership. It's important to point out here that the large corporations in America today own the news media, and that is a very, very negative thing. Some major incidents along that line will help people appreciate this. You may remember that NBC was bought out by General Electric, and David Letterman was quite upset about that. Also, it's very similar to the film Network that was made in 1976, that we highly recommend people watch. If you don't remember it, and if you're younger than us, you probably haven't seen it. And in that film, there's the news anchorman gone prophet Howard Beale is told in the boardroom that there are no more nations, that corporations run the world and that he is meddling in the primal forces of nature. So what we really want to emphasize is that we don't believe that it's ever the case that nations have become obsolete or that local governments become obsolete. When you get things that are too big to be controlled by the people themselves, then what you really have are monsters out of control.
And you are a journalist. You can write a blog. You can make videos. We don't need a college degree in journalism or literature to empower us to look around us and find things in our surroundings and to comment on them, whether it's by writing, whether it's by videos. And in fact, Don has made a video this week, and he'd like to share a little bit with you about it.
Right. One of the things that we never want to lose sight of, and I'm talking about Cindy and me and the work that we do, is that the loss of liberty, the tyranny that we see advancing at every turn, is primarily driven by banking forces, global finance. And it's important to keep the big picture in mind, otherwise you're not going to have the proper focus on the things that matter locally. You'll see things in the microcosm that are worth reporting on because they illustrate the fallout from the bigger picture. And the film that I am putting up on the web this week is made from a PowerPoint presentation that exposes the banking fraud that we have been seeing unfold. And this is based on a blog by Rick Taylor, who does excellent blog work and understands the situation that's happening with the bankers and the unfolding of the New World Order. And I put that in a 8 or 9 minute PowerPoint format, and that will help you see how this was orchestrated in detail through specific events, this financial collapse that we're in. And I think it'll open your eyes, and even if you've studied this in detail, just knowing some of the key factors will really help you stay focused on that. So.
Sure, it's very good. We'll let you know when it's up. Another film that we watched this week was called The Exam, and it's a film about a group of people who are all competing for the same job, and so it becomes a microcosm in a sense. These people are all in a small room. It's a little bit like Lord of the Flies for adults. These people are all in a small room together, and only one of them, they believe, will be given the job, and they interact together, and it's very interesting.
Right. You'll see the people be competitive in various ways and try to figure out this game of what is the question, what are they supposed to be doing, are they supposed to be cooperating or not, or what's going on here. And you'll see those dynamics play out in selfishness or caring or some kind of different subtleties as they relate to human nature and competitiveness, and whether or not that leads to advancement or not.
It has a great ending, without giving it away. And another film that we saw this week, we blasted through all 7 episodes of Downton Abbey. It's a Masterpiece Theater presentation, and it says it's by PBS as it comes on, but I'm quite sure that it was actually produced by BBC. And it gives insight into what it was like in the early 1900s to be in a manor house. And it's not the first exploration of that, but this is the story begins in 1912, and it shows some of the events leading up to World War I, but from a personal and family perspective, which is interesting. It's very well done. It's entertaining. It's informational. And did you enjoy it, Don?
I didn't pay attention to the details of the film nearly as much as Cindy did. It's the kind of film that draws her in more than me, but just looking in the background, it did have some observations. One of the things that you see in the film is a very class-oriented society in Great Britain just before the turn of the last, or after the turn of the last century. So one of the things that I noticed is how the servant class is somewhat childlike, and the ruling class expects them to be that way, doesn't really expect them to have personal responsibility and be managing their own lives. Their roles are the roles of servants. And extrapolating from that, you can see how we as Americans are definitely different from that form of society in our values, but yet how we have regressed back into them. We have tended to become more childlike and more trusting, not in a good way, of government and of authorities. And it's you see that we have lost some of the characteristics as Americans that make us different from the more class-oriented European societies, and that has to do with individual responsibility and the liberty that goes with that.
One of the really interesting ideas that is presented in the film is the idea of noblesse oblige, the obligation of the nobility. And while we certainly don't aren't enamored of the class system that has the lord of the manor and the servants, historically they were not malevolent necessarily. Many of the rulers through history have been benevolent. Now we've seen an even more, well, not even, just a more sinister twist added with the elite bankers and those who wish to control society, who are not benevolent but malevolent. They have influenced the ruling class, and we could go into more detail about that. If you're curious about it, an easy way is to read Bryce Taylor's book, Thanks for the Memories, The Truth Has Set Me Free, and you'll find stories in there where she interacted with Princess Di and Charles, and we've talked about this here before, in order to find weaknesses in their marriage that could be exploited so they could be weakened as people and as a nation.
I think there's an important point to make here as it relates to America and the world going into a period of time in which we are more actively resisting the negative forces that seek to enslave us. And as we mentioned before, that has a lot to do with the banking system, that has to do with the stratification of wealth in the hands of a few that are oppressing the many. But the thing that's pointed out by observing this film is that people with money and that are in control are not necessarily evil. There's a tendency in America to attribute those that are rich as being the people that are oppressing. But if we learn from history, we know that it takes resources to fight a battle, and the reason that one of the main reasons the American Revolution was successful to the extent that it was because there were wealthy people who were able to, like Roger Morris and others, that contributed to the cause and suffered for it. So I would encourage people not to get into this French Revolution idea of off with their heads if they have more money than you. This is mob democracy. This is not what we want. We want republic, rule of law. We want to be able to have principles of justice that do not allow people with more to oppress those with less. So stepping backward in time and seeing these people in a class system in which the people that have the resources did not have evil intent is a good lesson for people today.
Film that I happened to see by myself, it's pretty much a chick flick, was Eat, Pray, Love. And it's delightful. I don't know if men would like it. Probably not so much. But it's about a woman's quest for love, really, which begins following a painful divorce. And as the title indicates, first she tries eating and then she tries praying. And it's a good journey.
It's Julia Roberts, so if you're a Julia Roberts fan, you may like it. I like Julia Roberts.
Oh, okay. We'll watch it again later. How's that?
Yeah, I guess I was just busy at the time. I don't have anything against it.
No, yeah, I knew it was my opportunity to watch a chick flick. So, Don, do you have anything further to add for this week?
I don't think so, not really.
Okay. Well, we hope you have enjoyed this week's video, and we hope you have a great week. And the Lord bless you. And
Go in grace and peace and liberty.
yeah.
Enjoy your life. Don't let the cares weigh you down.